Take a slow breath in. Right now, quietly, without even thinking, you are pulling air into a pair of lungs that took evolution hundreds of millions of years to build. They are delicate. They are precious. They are the single thing standing between you and death at every second of your life. And here is the strange part. You belong to the only animal on this entire planet that will, on purpose, fill those lungs with smoke. Not by accident, not caught in a wildfire. On purpose. We are the creature that looked at the one thing every other animal runs screaming from, fire, and the choking gray cloud that rises off it, and somewhere, somehow, decided to breathe it in. Think about how bizarre that really is. We share this planet with millions of species, and not a single other one does this. No animal seeks out fire and pulls its smoke into its own body for the feeling. Cats do not. Dolphins, as clever as they are, do not. Chimps, who share almost all of our DNA, run from smoke like everything else. Only us. Somewhere in our long story, one line of frightened apes crossed a threshold no other creature ever has, and started treating the most dangerous thing in nature as something to invite inside. That single strange habit is what we are here to explain. Every other living thing treats smoke as a warning. It means danger. It means run. A deer smells smoke and flees. A bird feels it and flies away. An oldest alarm in life itself. And then there is us, sitting calmly in the middle of it, pulling it deep into our chests, and somehow feeling something close to peace. So when did that begin? When did a frightened, fire-fearing ape become the animal that breathes the smoke on purpose? The answer is older than you would ever guess. Older than tobacco. Older than farming. Older, in a way, than our species even being fully human. And to understand it, we have to throw out almost everything you think the word smoking means. Because the real story does not start with a pipe or a plant or a habit. It starts with the single most important thing our ancestors ever touched. It starts with fire. There are several layers to this, and each one is stranger and a little darker than the last. So let us peel them back, one at a time. Let us go. Start with a fact that quietly rewrites the whole question. In a sense, humans have been breathing smoke for around 1 million years. Deep in a cave in southern Africa, researchers found the burnt remains of ancient fires, along with scorched bone and ash sealed in layers roughly 1 million years old. Our ancestors, walking that landscape long before we looked like us, were already sitting beside flames. And think about what a fire actually is when you live inside it. Not a fireplace with a chimney, not a stove. A fire in the mouth of a cave, or in the center of a low shelter with no way for the smoke to escape except to hang there, in the air, in your eyes, in your throat, in your lungs. Every night, for your entire life, from the day you were born to the day you died. There was no escaping it. This was not an occasional campfire on a weekend. This was the constant, unavoidable, life-giving center of every single day, and its smoke was simply part of the air you were born breathing. A child in that world drew its very first breath in a haze of wood smoke and drew its last one the same way. Fire and its smoke were not a danger you sometimes met. They were the weather inside your home, every hour for 100,000 generations, and your body quietly kept a record of every single lungful. So the truth is almost funny. Long before anyone lit a plant to feel something, our ancestors were already smokers. Not by choice, by simply existing near the thing that kept them alive. Fire gave them warmth. It gave them cooked food. It scared off predators in the dark. It was the greatest gift our species was ever handed, and it came with a price, breathed in, lungful after lungful, generation after generation. And we know they paid that price because we can still see it. When scientists examine the preserved bodies of ancient people, mummies, frozen bodies, remains pulled from bogs and ice, they find something grim inside. The lungs are stained, blackened. Coated in fine soot and carbon, the exact signature of a lifetime spent breathing wood smoke in a closed space. The famous Iceman found frozen in the Alps, thousands of years old, had it. His lungs were dark with the smoke of countless fires. That condition even has a name today, and the haunting thing is this. A modern doctor, looking at those ancient lungs, would recognize the damage instantly, because it looks almost identical to the lungs of someone who spent their life breathing smoke in our own world. Different fire, different century, same black stain. We have been paying the smoke tax for a very, very long time. That condition even has a proper name, anthracosis, the slow blackening of the lungs by inhaled soot and carbon, and it is astonishingly common in ancient remains. Study preserved bodies from almost anywhere people lived indoors with fire, from frozen mountains to dry deserts to the peat bogs of the north, and again, the lungs tell the very same story. Men, women, children, all of them carrying the dark residue of a life lived in smoke. It was simply the background condition of being human. To be alive was to be warm. To be warm was to breathe smoke. And to breathe smoke for a whole lifetime was to slowly stain the very thing that was keeping you alive. But this is only passive smoke. Fire you sit beside, the real mystery, the one that makes us truly strange, is not about smoke we simply endured. It is about the day a human being, for the first time, chose to breathe smoke in, deliberately, because they wanted what it did to them. And to reach that moment, something had to change. Someone had to notice that the smoke was not just a price. Sometimes it was a doorway. Here is how it probably happened, and it is beautifully simple. Imagine a fire, tens of thousands of years ago. Someone tosses on whatever is nearby to keep it burning. Dry brush, leaves, roots, handfuls of whatever the land gives. And one night, someone throws on the wrong plant. Or maybe the right one. And the smoke that curls up is different. It smells strange. And as they breathe it, sitting close, something shifts behind their eyes. The world tilts, just slightly. A feeling arrives that they have never had before, and did not summon, and cannot explain. Put yourself in that moment. You have no science, no word for chemistry, no concept of a drug. You only know that the fire, the thing you already half worship, has just reached into your mind and moved something. To you, that is not a plant. That is not smoke. That is magic. That is a spirit. That is the fire speaking directly to you. And you are going to want to understand it. You are going to do it again. And this is the turning point in the entire story. Because from here on, smoke stops being only something we suffered and starts becoming something we sought. A tool, a medicine, a key, a way to touch a world you otherwise could not reach. The smoke had been in our lungs for 1,000,000 years. Now, for the first time, it was in our intentions. And notice how enormous that shift really is. For 1,000,000 years, smoke was something that happened to us. A side effect, a cost of survival we simply absorbed. But the moment a human chose to breathe a particular smoke, to feel a particular thing, we crossed over, from victims of the fire into partners with it. We began to experiment, to select, to remember which plant did what. In a sense, this was one of the first pieces of chemistry our species ever performed, thousands of years before we had any word for it, worked out entirely by feel, around a fire, in the dark. But why does breathing smoke do anything to the mind at all? Here is the quiet genius of it, and our ancestors stumbled onto it by pure accident. Your lungs are not just bellows. They are one of the most efficient doorways into your bloodstream that your entire body owns. A vast, thin, endlessly folded surface built to move things into your blood in seconds. Swallow a plant and it takes an age to work, filtered and broken down along the way. But burn that same plant and breathe it, and whatever it carries slips almost instantly through your lungs and races to your brain in a single heartbeat. Fire did not just release the plant's hidden power, it handed our ancestors the fastest possible way to feel it. They had found a shortcut straight to the mind without ever knowing the door was there. So how far back does that go? For a long time, the honest answer from science was, not that far. The oldest hard proof of people using a smoking plant seemed to sit only a few thousand years in the past. Pipes, residue, burnt seeds, a scattering of evidence that felt almost recent compared to fire itself. And then, not long ago, the timeline broke wide open. In a stretch of ancient mudflats in the American West, in what is now a bleak desert, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a tiny fireplace left by people at the very end of the Ice Age. And tucked in the ash, they found something they did not expect: charred seeds of a wild tobacco plant. Burnt, handled, brought there on purpose. And the age of that little hearth? Around 12,000 years old. 12,000 years. Let that number sit for a second. That is thousands of years before farming took hold in that part of the world. Thousands of years before pottery, before villages, before almost anything we picture when we imagine early settled life. Hunter-gatherers, following the herds across a cold and open land, were already carrying tobacco to their fires. The habit is not a footnote of modern history. It reaches back nearly to the Ice Age itself. Now, science is careful here, and so am I. Finding burnt tobacco seeds in an ancient fire does not prove, beyond all doubt, exactly how they used it. Maybe they smoked it. Maybe they chewed it and the seeds ended up in the flames. The point is not one perfect answer. The point is that our relationship with these powerful plants is staggeringly, almost unbelievably old, far older than we ever assumed. And once you start looking, you find these plants woven through the ancient world everywhere, in every direction, on every inhabited continent. Because here is the pattern that should stop you cold. All around the globe, separated by whole oceans, by tens of thousands of years, by peoples who never met and never could have, humans kept discovering the same idea over and over, on their own. In the Americas, tobacco. In Asia, another plant. In Africa and beyond, aromatic resins. The specific plants changed with the land. The impulse never did, which tells us something profound. This was not one invention that spread from one clever place. This was something humans reach for again and again, wherever they are, as if it is written into us. Give a person a fire and a world full of plants and enough time, and eventually, somewhere, someone will lean into the smoke on purpose. It seems to be part of who we are. Nowhere did this go deeper than the Americas. Tobacco there was not a casual pleasure. It was one of the most sacred plants on 2 entire continents, and far stronger than the mild versions most of the world knows today. Shamans used it in doses that would floor an ordinary person, precisely to be knocked loose from the everyday world and thrown into visions. And tobacco was only the beginning. Across South America, people ground seeds and bark into potent snuffs and blew them forcefully straight up one another's noses through hollow bird-bone tubes. They brewed and burned dozens of visionary plants, mapping out the invisible world with a care and precision that still stuns researchers today. To these cultures, the smoke and the snuff were never recreation. They were sacred technology, tools for talking to gods, healing the sick, and seeing what could not otherwise be seen. So let us talk about that other plant, the one from the mountains, because the evidence there is some of the most vivid we have ever found. High up in a cold mountain range in Central Asia, archaeologists opened a series of ancient graves, roughly 2,500 years old. And inside, resting with the dead, they found wooden braziers, little containers for burning things. Charred, blackened, waiting. And when they analyzed the burnt residue trapped inside those braziers, they found the chemical fingerprint of cannabis. Not just any cannabis either. It carried unusually high levels of the compound that alters the mind, higher than what typically grows wild, which hints at something remarkable. These people may have been seeking out, or even encouraging, the stronger plants on purpose. They knew what they were doing. They wanted the effect. And picture the scene those braziers describe. A funeral, high in the freezing mountains, 2,500 years ago. Mourners gathered in the cold around the dead. Hot stones. The braziers lit, thick, potent smoke rising into the thin mountain air, filling the space, filling their lungs, blurring the terrible line between the living and the ones they had just lost. This was not a casual habit. This was smoke as a bridge to the dead, smoke as prayer, and that is the thread that runs through almost all of it, across the whole ancient world. Smoking, for most of human history, was not about pleasure the way we might think of it now. It was sacred. It was serious. The smoke went up, and people believed it carried something with it, a message, a prayer, an offering, up to whatever they imagined was watching from above. You breathed the smoke to change your mind, yes, but you burned it to reach the sky. Think about how much sense that makes to an ancient mind. What does smoke do? It rises. It leaves the ground, leaves the world of solid things, and vanishes upward into the heavens where the gods and the ancestors were thought to live. If you wanted to send something to that world, gratitude, grief, a plea, what better messenger than the one substance that visibly, obviously travels there on its own? Fire consumed the offering. Smoke carried it home. And it was not always about altering the mind at all. Sometimes the smoke itself was the whole point. Across the ancient world, from the great temples of Egypt to the altars of the Near East, people burned precious resins, frankincense, myrrh, fragrant woods, purely so the sweet smoke could rise. These resins were so valued they were traded like gold, carried thousands of miles across deserts by caravan, and burned in staggering quantities to please the gods and to honor the dead. Walk into an ancient temple and the air itself was thick with sacred smoke, curling around the statues, filling the darkness, carrying the prayers of an entire civilization upward toward the heavens. The person burned it. The god received it. And the smoke was the language spoken between them. Even now, in temples and churches all around the world, that exact ritual quietly continues. So the shaman, the healer, the priest, the person who could handle the sacred smoke, became one of the most powerful people in the group. They held the key to the doorway. They could breathe the smoke, fall into a trance, and return claiming to have walked among spirits and come back with answers. Whether or not you believe a single word of it, imagine the authority that gave them. Smoke did not just alter minds, it built the ladder that some humans climbed to become leaders. And there was one more thing the smoke did, maybe the most human thing of all. It brought people together. Because smoking was so often a shared act, passed from hand to hand, breathed in a circle around a single fire. In the Americas, the ceremonial pipe became sacred precisely because it was shared, passed between people to seal an agreement, to welcome a stranger, to make peace between enemies. To smoke together was to trust together. The rising smoke bound a circle of people into something briefly larger than themselves, watched, they believed, by the spirits above. Long before we had contracts, or courtrooms, or written law, we had a fire, a plant, and a circle of people breathing the same sacred smoke. And somehow, that was enough to hold a promise together. And here's where the whole story turns back on itself and gets a little heartbreaking. Because that same smoke, the sacred one, the one that carried prayers and crowned shamans and comforted the grieving, was quietly doing to their lungs exactly what the cooking fire always had. Blackening them, scarring them. Every deliberate breath of it added to the same ancient debt our species has been paying since the first fire was ever lit. They almost certainly did not know the full cost. They could not see the damage building silently, breath by breath, inside their own chests. All they knew was that the smoke gave them something extraordinary: warmth, visions, medicine, a line to the dead, a feeling nothing else could give. And so, like us, they kept breathing it, because the gift felt worth the price, even a price they could not fully see. And that right there is the oldest bargain our species has ever made. It is not really about tobacco or any single plant. It runs so much deeper. From the very first fire, we struck a deal. We took the smoke into our bodies, first to survive, then to heal, then to pray, then simply because we could not stop, and in exchange, we quietly paid with our lungs. 1,000,000 years of warmth and wonder breathed in. 1,000,000 years of soot and shadow, the cost. And what is almost unbearable to sit with is that we never really renegotiated it. The plants changed, the rituals faded, the reasons dressed themselves up in 1,000 new disguises across the centuries. But the shape of the trade stayed exactly the same. Draw the smoke in, receive the feeling, and quietly hand over a little more of the one thing you cannot replace. Our ancestors made that bargain in firelight without ever fully understanding its terms. And the strangest, most sobering truth of all is that deep down, most of us are still making the very same deal today. So when did ancient humans start smoking? The honest answer is that there is no single, clean beginning. There is a long, layered story, and each layer reaches back further than the one before. Passive wood smoke, 1,000,000 years. Tobacco at the fire, 12,000 years. Sacred plants in graves, 2,500 years. And all across the ancient world, again and again, wherever there was fire and there were plants, humans leaned into the smoke on purpose. Not one invention, a slow, stubborn, worldwide pull toward the smoke, driven by survival, by wonder, by grief, by the deep human hunger to feel something more and to reach something higher. Every one of those reasons is ancient. And every one of them is still with us. Because here's the part that should give you a small chill. That impulse never left. The specific reasons drifted and changed over the centuries, but the ancient shape of the thing survived almost perfectly intact. The fire that was once sacred is mostly gone. The prayers are mostly gone. But the human being, sitting quietly, breathing in the smoke on purpose, feeling something shift and paying for it slowly with their own lungs, that person is still here. That person has always been here, and the fire is still at the center of it, even when there is no fire at all. Because what our ancestors were really chasing, from that very first accidental breath, was never the smoke itself. It was what the smoke did. A feeling, an escape, a moment of something other than ordinary life. That hunger is one of the oldest things about us, older than any language, older than any god we ever named. And that is why it is so hard to explain, and so hard to stop. You are not fighting a modern invention or a recent bad idea. You are up against one of the deepest grooves ever worn into the human mind, cut by 1,000,000 years of firelight, and then reinforced by prayer, by grief, by ceremony, by the simple animal comfort of the warm smoke and the feeling it brings. It is not a weakness in a few unlucky people. It is a very old shape in all of us, one that fire pressed into our species long, long before any of us were ever born. So the next time you see it, smoke rising, someone breathing it in, that quiet, faraway look on their face, Remember what you are really looking at. You are not looking at a modern habit. You are looking at one of the oldest ceremonies on Earth, worn down and stripped of its meaning, but still, somehow, being performed. A person, and a fire, and the ancient, dangerous, irresistible cloud between them. We are the animal that made friends with fire. And then slowly, over 1,000,000 years, we discovered we could never quite stop breathing it in. That is not a small thing. It is one of the strangest, most human stories there is, written quietly in the dark of every ancient pair of lungs that ever pulled the smoke a little deeper. You were never just breathing. You never were.